The coffee shop smelled of cinnamon and burnt espresso. Tuesday afternoons were a refuge for those trying to avoid reality, and Emma Collins claimed one corner booth as her fortress. She slouched deliberately in an oversized gray sweatshirt, the one that had probably been trendy in 2015. Her hair was piled into a messy bun that didn't suggest fashion but exhaustion, and she had chosen her oldest pair of jeans, the ones with a small, faded stain on the knee from a pasta incident she preferred to forget. No makeup. Definitely no makeup. Emma checked her phone again, 3 times in 5 minutes. Sophie, her relentless best friend and self-appointed matchmaker, had set this blind date, and Emma had agreed only to stop the nagging. After 3 years of failed relationships and a spectacularly disastrous engagement to Ryan Miller, the man who'd emptied her savings account before vanishing, Emma had a foolproof strategy. Look as unappealing as possible on first dates. If a man couldn't handle her at her worst, he didn't deserve her at her best, or something like that. Mostly, she just wanted to survive the next hour without another disappointment. The door chimed, and Emma glanced up, expecting someone average, wearing khakis, probably recommended by Sophie. Instead, a man in a perfectly tailored charcoal suit entered, moving with quiet confidence that suggested the world bent around him rather than against him. His dark hair was touched with silver at the temples, and he carried himself with effortless ease. Their eyes met. He smiled and walked directly toward her booth. Emma. His voice was warm with a slight rasp, like late nights or good whiskey. I'm Ethan Blackwell. Sophie said you'd be here. Emma's mouth went dry. This couldn't be right. Sophie had described her blind date as a nice guy from work who could use a friend. This man looked like he had just stepped off a magazine cover. She glanced down at her ratty sweatshirt and considered melting into the cracked leather of the booth. That's me, she managed. You can sit or not. I mean, if you need to leave, I totally understand. Ethan's smile widened, revealing a dimple in his left cheek. Why would I leave? I just got here. He slid into the booth across from her with ease, a casual elegance that made Emma more nervous. I have to say, Sophie didn't mention you have the most expressive eyes I've ever seen. They're remarkable. Emma blinked. Was he sure he had the right person? She worked at Patterson Elementary as a third-grade teacher, loved murder mystery podcasts, had a cat named Miss Marple, and, according to Sophie, made the best chocolate chip cookies in 3 counties. That's what I was told, Ethan said, his interest genuine. Though I have to admit, the cookie thing intrigued me most. Despite herself, Emma felt a small smile tug at her lips. Sophie talks too much, she thought. Ethan leaned back, relaxed. Sophie said you were single and could use a friend. She didn't tell me anything else. Emma's heart sank. Of course, he was Sophie's boss. Some pity date, probably arranged because she'd mentioned her hermit lifestyle one too many times. I own a consulting firm downtown, he said, waving a hand dismissively. Very boring stuff. Corporate restructuring, efficiency analysis, thrilling, I know. But I'd much rather hear about third graders. They're probably more entertaining than middle-aged executives worrying about profit margins. A barista appeared, and Ethan ordered a black coffee. Emma asked for a chai latte, immediately regretting the pretension. Confession time, Ethan said once the barista left. Emma braced herself for the polite exit speech she expected. I asked Sophie not to describe me to you, he admitted. I've had experiences with women who were more interested in my bank account than in me. Pretending not to notice when someone's eyes light up at a title rather than the person, it gets exhausting. Emma studied him. There was something genuine there, a weariness around his eyes that she recognized from her own heartbreak after Ryan. Sophie didn't tell me anything except that you were single and could use a friend, she said honestly. Almost canceled 3 times. I'm not really in a dating place right now, possibly ever. Bad breakup, theft, abandonment combo special. She gestured at her sweatshirt. Not my best look. Ethan laughed, genuinely. Brilliant. Wish I'd thought of it. I once wore a fake mustache to a setup dinner. Didn't work. Very dignified mustache. Made me look like a Victorian gentleman. Or so I told myself. Emma couldn't help but laugh. You did not. I did. Relationship lasted 3 weeks before she asked if I'd invest in her friend's cryptocurrency startup. That's when I knew the mustache had failed its mission. Their conversation flowed effortlessly for the next hour. Ethan asked about her students, and Emma found herself telling stories about 8-year-old drama and playground politics. He listened as though each story was fascinating. When she asked about his work, he made corporate consulting sound almost adventurous, self-deprecating humor easing the tension. As the coffee shop prepared to close, Emma stood. "I have lesson plans to finish. Can I see you again?" Ethan's directness caught her off guard. "Maybe somewhere you feel comfortable dressing however you want. Though I have to say, that sweatshirt is growing on me." Emma hesitated. Every instinct screamed to protect herself. But something about Ethan felt different. Maybe it was the way he looked at her ratty clothes and messy hair and smiled like she was exactly what he'd hoped to find. "Okay," she said quietly, "but I choose the place, and I'm paying for myself." "Deal," Ethan said, offering his hand. She took it, feeling warmth in his palm. As they walked toward the door, Emma's phone buzzed with a text from Sophie. "How's it going? Did you scare him off yet?" Emma glanced at Ethan, holding the door open for her. His expression was hopeful, kind. She had no idea that the man she'd just agreed to see again was a billionaire, or that his consulting firm was a global empire. She only knew that for the first time in 3 years, she felt a flutter of something that might be hope. Saturday morning, Emma Collins stood in front of her closet for 20 minutes. 20 minutes longer than she had spent getting ready for any date in the past 6 months. She had suggested meeting Ethan at the public library's used book sale, a casual setting that felt meaningful enough to show she cared without feeling pressured. The question was, how much effort should she put in? Her cat, Miss Marple, sat on the bed, her plump body curled like a question mark, green eyes giving Emma a look that seemed to say, "Really? Don't look at me like that," Emma muttered. "I'm allowed to care a little bit." After rejecting several options, a frilly dress too fancy, jeans with tiny stains, a sweater that screamed trying too hard, she finally settled on dark jeans and a soft cream-colored sweater Sophie had bought for her last Christmas. Minimal makeup, hair down and actually brushed. She looked like herself, only a slightly polished version. Ethan was already waiting outside the library when she arrived. He wore jeans and a dark green Henley shirt, casual yet somehow elegant. When he saw her, his face lit up in a way that made her stomach flip. "You came," he said, as if he had ever doubted it. "I said I would," Emma replied, adjusting her purse strap nervously. "Plus, I never miss this sale. Last year, I found a first edition of Agatha Christie for $3. She gestured at Miss Marple's namesake, smiling. They spent the next 2 hours wandering tables of old books, trading favorite authors, and laughing over shared quirks. Ethan had an unexpected passion for history, particularly maritime disasters, which Emma found endearingly morbid. She introduced him to her favorite mystery novels, and he seemed genuinely interested. "My grandmother got me hooked on mysteries," Emma explained, holding up a dog-eared copy of classic. She used to say they taught the most important life skill, paying attention to what people don't say. "Wise woman," Ethan said. He paused by a table of old photographs and postcards. "My grandfather taught me something similar about business. He said, the best deals happen when you listen more than you talk." Emma's curiosity slipped out before she could stop it. "Is that how you became successful?" Ethan's expression became slightly guarded. "Sophie has a generous definition of doing well. But yes, I've been fortunate. My grandfather started with a small accounting office, very humble beginnings. Money is just a tool. What matters is what you build with it, and who you become in the process." Emma noticed a subtle weariness in his tone, a careful neutrality that hinted at things he wasn't saying. She didn't push. She had her own guarded wounds, her own stories of betrayal and loss. After the library, Ethan suggested lunch at a nearby diner, the kind with cracked vinyl booths and a menu unchanged since 1987. Emma loved it immediately, the simplicity, the lack of pretense. Over burgers and milkshakes, Ethan asked gently about her ex-fiancé. "Ryan," she said, dragging a French fry through ketchup. 4 years together, engaged for 6 months. I thought I knew him until I discovered he'd been unemployed for 8 months and never told me. He took out credit cards in my name, emptied our joint savings account, and left a note saying he needed to find himself. He found himself in Costa Rica with his yoga instructor. The words left a bitter taste, but she spoke evenly, as though tasting the bitter was the only way to finish it. And it wasn't just the money, she continued. It was realizing I'd been blind. I teach kids to recognize patterns and solve problems, yet I couldn't see what was happening in my own life. She finally ate the French fry. Ethan reached across the table, hand near hers, but not touching. You weren't blind. There's a difference. Emma laughed softly, despite herself. What about you? Isabella, Ethan said, and his expression hardened. We dated for a year. Elegant, sophisticated, all the right things. Then I discovered she'd been recording our private conversations and selling details to journalists. Nothing illegal, just intimate information about my life, my business decisions, my family. Things I shared in confidence. Emma's chest tightened. That's horrible. It was, Ethan admitted. I've been avoiding dating since. Until Sophie cornered me in my office and insisted I meet someone honest. And here we are. The word billionaire hung unspoken between them. Emma's mind went blank for a moment before racing. Ethan noticed her reaction. I should have told you sooner, but I was enjoying being just Ethan for a while. Not Ethan Blackwell, not the billionaire. Just me. Emma's voice went a little higher than intended. Ethan, you're a billionaire. Yes, he said quietly. I own a consulting empire, but that's not what I want you to think about. I want you to know me. Emma felt a flutter of fear and hope. I need a minute, she admitted. Everything is moving too fast. Ethan nodded, calm. I understand. Take your time. I'm not going anywhere. By the end of lunch, Emma had agreed to a few conditions for their budding relationship. Split bills, move slowly, protect boundaries. Ethan smiled, understanding her caution. As they walked back to their cars, Emma felt something she hadn't felt in years. Curiosity and excitement without dread. For the first time since Ryan, she felt the faint stirrings of hope. And Ethan? He had already made a silent decision the moment he saw Emma deliberately slouched in that cream sweater, messy hair and all. He had found exactly what he was looking for. A week after their library date, Emma Collins found herself nervously adjusting her sweater in the passenger seat of Ethan Blackwell's sleek car. The drive to his estate took them winding through the hills overlooking the city, where privacy hedges and iron gates hinted at lives far removed from Emma's own modest existence. I should warn you, Ethan said, glancing at her with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. My family can be challenging. Perfect, Emma muttered dryly. No pressure. By the time they arrived at the estate, Emma felt a familiar flutter of anxiety. She had been in situations that tested her nerves before, but never like this. The house was massive, sprawling across manicured grounds with stone facades and expansive glass windows. It felt more like a museum than a home. Ethan parked in the circular driveway, turning to face her. Look at me, Emma. I'm wearing a sweater from Target. You're perfect as you are. Emma forced a laugh. That's comforting. Inside, a housekeeper greeted them, unsurprised by Emma's presence. That small detail eased her nerves slightly. The interior was even more overwhelming. Soaring ceilings, priceless artwork, and furniture that looked untouchable. Ethan's mother, Madeline Blackwell, waited in the sitting room. Silver-haired and impeccably styled, her expression was coolly assessing. Mother, this is Emma Collins, Ethan said, guiding Emma gently forward. Emma, my mother. Mrs. Blackwell, Emma said, offering her hand. Lovely to meet you. Madeline's handshake was brief, formal. Ethan has told us very little about you. He's been protective. Protective, not secretive, Ethan corrected. Given past experiences, caution was warranted. Before Emma could process, a younger man appeared. Marcus Blackwell, Ethan's brother. His dark eyes immediately sized her up. So, you're the teacher? Marcus said. No handshake, just a sharp glance. Interesting choice, Chris. Marcus, Ethan warned, tone firm. Dinner was excruciating. They sat in a formal dining room. a table that could seat 20 but only had 4 occupants. Madeline asked pointed questions about Emma's family, her education, and her prospects. Marcus's comments flirted with insult, testing her patience. Ethan's jaw tightened beside her, but he stayed composed. Finally, Emma spoke, her voice steady despite her racing heart. Actually, I didn't know who Ethan was when we met. Sophie, our mutual friend, set us up. She described him as a nice guy from work who could use a friend. I showed up in my rattiest sweatshirt specifically to discourage romantic interest because I've been avoiding dating since my ex-fiancée disappeared after ruining my finances. The room fell silent. What attracted me to Ethan, Emma continued, was that he listened when I talked about my students, made me laugh, and was kind to everyone around him. I didn't know his money, and it wasn't relevant. What matters is who he is. She turned to Marcus. And honestly, I keep waiting for this to become less terrifying. But every day, there's some new article implying I'm a gold digger. I'm not here for money. I'm here for Ethan. Madeline's expression softened slightly, respect replacing judgment. Marcus looked as if he had been slapped. Ethan's attempt to suppress a smile failed. Well, Madeline said after a long pause, at least you have a spine. More than I can say for the last 3 women Ethan brought home. Ethan exhaled in relief. I like her, Madeline added firmly. Marcus muttered, I mean to protect family assets. I don't want his money, Emma said tiredly. I just want him. But it feels impossible when everyone around him sees me as a threat. Ethan stood abruptly. We're leaving. Christopher, Madeline began. No, Ethan interrupted. Emma came as a favor to me to make this easier. Instead, she's been treated like an interloper. When you're ready to treat her with the respect she deserves, we'll try again. Emma followed him out, barely processing the events. They drove in silence for several minutes until Ethan pulled over at a scenic overlook. The city lights sparkled below. Emma, he said softly, jaw tight. I'm falling in love with you. I know it's fast and complicated, but watching you stand up for yourself. I've never met anyone like you. You're not impressed by money or intimidated by it. You see me. Tears filled Emma's eyes. This is really hard. I want to believe it can work, but I'm scared. I am too, Ethan admitted. Victoria's betrayal nearly destroyed me. I swore I'd never trust again. Then you showed up in that ridiculous sweatshirt, and suddenly I wanted to try. What if your family never accepts me? Emma asked. Then we build our own family, he said, pressing her hand against his chest. You mean Miss Marple? Maybe some kids who will appreciate murder mysteries and maritime disasters. You're insane. Probably, she laughed through tears. But yes to trying. And yes, I'm buying my own pizza from now on. They stayed at the overlook, holding hands, letting the city lights reflect the calm neither had felt during dinner. Despite the tension, despite the judgment, despite the difference in worlds, they had found a moment of certainty. And for the first time, Emma realized that trust and honesty, even in a whirlwind of complications, could be the start of something extraordinary. 3 weeks into dating Ethan, Emma Collins' carefully constructed normal life began to crack. It started small, a photographer outside her apartment building, a gossip blog speculating on her every move, Sophie whispering urgently at school pickup. Have you seen this? Sophie asked, shoving her phone toward Emma. Emma took the device, scrolling through a headline that made her stomach churn. Billionaire Ethan Blackwell's new flame. Elementary school teacher or gold digger? The article dissected her background, even including a photo of her apartment building captioned, Modest living for now. This is insane, Emma whispered. They don't even know me. Ethan needs to shut this down. Sophie shook her head. He has, trust me. Publicists, social media teams, every outlet. But gossip sites? They don't care about truth. Only clicks. And right now you're trending. Emma's fingers trembled slightly. She had spent years protecting her privacy, rebuilding her life after Ryan's betrayal, and suddenly, all of it felt fragile. Her phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. I'm so sorry. Trying to manage it. Maybe we should cool things off until this dies down. Emma stared at the screen. Cool things off? She hated even typing the words in her head. No, she whispered aloud, shaking her head. I'm not giving up now. After school, She sat on her classroom floor, surrounded by glitter and construction paper from the day's art project. Her students' colorful creations seemed almost cruelly cheerful in contrast to her anxiety. Miss Marple curled beside her, purring softly. Ethan's voice was in her mind. He had wanted her to feel normal, to be herself. But suddenly, her life felt like a stage, and everyone was watching, waiting for her to stumble. She called him. "Ethan, there's a photographer outside the grocery store today. And the blogs. I can't keep looking over my shoulder." "I know," Ethan said, voice heavy. "I tried to contain it. I really did. It's not fair to you. I'm sorry. Let me fix it." Emma's chest tightened. "It's not about fixing. It's about me. I can't live my life constantly being scrutinized. I teach kids to be brave, to face challenges, to be honest. And now I feel like I'm failing myself." "Understand," Ethan said quietly. "But I can't stay away. I can't not be here." Emma rubbed her temples. "Then let's do this. We face it together, but on my terms. I need boundaries. No public appearances unless I choose. No explanations to everyone else unless I'm ready. Can you do that?" "I can," he replied without hesitation. "I'll follow your lead. Always." A week passed with careful balance. They met at neutral spots. A small cafe far from prying eyes, a park where they could walk unnoticed, a quiet bookstore. Each meeting was a reminder that beneath the chaos of public attention, they had something real. Still, the whispers didn't stop. At school, Sophie cornered Emma again. "You saw it today, right? Someone snapped a picture while you were leaving your apartment with Ethan. Online by morning." Emma sighed. "I know. I can't change who I am. I can't pretend to live a life I don't have." "You're stronger than this," Sophie said. "And he sees it. That's what matters. Don't let them change you." Emma thought about Ethan's eyes, how he had listened, how he hadn't judged, how he had respected her boundaries when it would have been easier not to. She smiled despite herself. The next Saturday, they met at a small farmer's market. Emma wore jeans, a casual sweater, sneakers that had seen better days. Ethan appeared beside her, unassuming in a hoodie and jeans, a shopping tote over his shoulder. "You look happy," he said. "Not stage happy. Real happy." Emma laughed. "I'm trying. But these people," she waved vaguely at the few others milling nearby. "They're relentless. They see us differently than we see each other," Ethan said. "That doesn't make it real. You're real, and you're mine. No one else gets to define that." They walked, selecting fresh produce and sampling pastries, laughing at small mishaps. Miss Marple's imagined commentary, Emma accidentally bumping into a display, Ethan joking about maritime disasters. Normalcy, fleeting as it was, felt like an oasis. Later, sitting on a low stone wall eating ice cream, Emma admitted, "Sometimes I wonder if I'm ready for this. The scrutiny, the attention, the constant pressure." Ethan put his arm around her, careful not to pull too close. "I know, but I also know I want to do this. With you. Every challenge, every difficult day, every headline. We handle it together." Emma rested her head on his shoulder. "I want that too, but I need to keep my independence. My life, my work, my choices. I can't let anyone take that from me." "And you won't," Ethan said. "Not as long as I'm here." It wasn't perfect. There were moments when Emma's heart raced at the thought of photographers, bloggers, strangers with opinions she hadn't asked for. But each time she glanced at Ethan, watching him notice a child laughing nearby, or pausing to admire the sunlight through leaves, she remembered what truly mattered, the quiet, unshakable reality of their bond. By evening, they parted with a promise to meet again soon, and Emma walked home feeling strangely light. Yes, there was scrutiny. Yes, there were whispers, but she had a choice, to let them control her or to live fully with someone who saw her for who she really was. And for the first time since Ryan, she felt the stirrings of courage she hadn't known she'd lost. Courage to be herself, courage to trust, courage to love without apology. Because despite the chaos outside, inside, she and Ethan were exactly where they belonged. It was a gray Wednesday morning when Ethan's phone rang, the sound cutting through the quiet of his office. He glanced at the screen and saw Marcus's name. A sinking feeling settled in his chest. Marcus, Ethan said, trying to keep his voice neutral. Ethan, we need to talk. Marcus began, tone clipped. It's about Emma. Before you get angry, just listen. Ethan's heart beat faster. He could feel the tension radiating through the line. Okay, go ahead. Marcus took a deep breath. I hired a private investigator. I was concerned. You know how I feel about family and... Marcus, I don't want to lecture. Ethan interrupted, already uneasy. I trust Emma. If you're calling to insult her, don't. This isn't an insult, Marcus said firmly. It's information you need to know. I thought you should hear the truth. Ethan listened, rigid in his chair, as Marcus recounted the details. Emma's ex-fiancé, Ryan, hadn't just abandoned her. He had drained her accounts, taken out loans in her name, and left her liable for over $200,000 in debts. She's been paying it off for 3 years, Marcus continued quietly. Working extra hours, tutoring, summer school. She hasn't taken a vacation. She lives modestly because she's rebuilding, not because she wants charity. The office felt suddenly smaller, the hum of the city outside muted against the weight of the revelation. Ethan ran a hand through his hair, anger and guilt warping together. Marcus, he said carefully, voice tight. You had no right to invade her privacy like that. I know, Marcus admitted, but I thought I was protecting you. I thought I was protecting the family. Ethan exhaled slowly. You were wrong. Completely. But I needed to hear this. Thank you for telling me. Without another word, he ended the call and immediately left the office, driving straight to Emma's apartment. The city passed by in a blur, a mix of late commuters and morning sunlight reflecting off glass towers. By the time he reached her, he was tense, his mind running through the words he needed to say. Emma was in her classroom, as usual, grading papers at a desk surrounded by colorful student artwork. She looked up at the sound of his voice and startled. Ethan, what are you doing here? I came to talk, he said, stepping into the room, eyes scanning the cheerful chaos around her. I know about Ryan. Marcus told me everything. Emma froze, a mix of shock and anger crossing her face. Marcus investigated me? Yes. And it was wrong, Ethan admitted. Completely. But I needed to know the truth. I needed to understand why you've been living like this. $200,000 in debt, handling it alone. Emma, I had no idea. Her hands clenched the edge of her desk. I didn't tell you because it's my problem, not yours. I didn't want charity, Ethan. I didn't want someone to fix it for me. I needed to do it myself. I get that now, he said quietly. I see that now. But I also see that you've been carrying all of this alone. And I want to help. Not to take over, not to erase your efforts. I just want to stand beside you. Emma's chest tightened. The words were comforting, but the pride she had nurtured over years of rebuilding screamed at her. I can't let you do that. This is my life, my independence. I've spent years proving I can survive. I won't let anyone, even you, take that away with a check or a gesture. Ethan stepped closer, careful to respect her space. I'm not trying to take it away. I'm trying to share it. I want to be your partner, Emma, not your savior. Your strength doesn't intimidate me. It draws me to you. She studied him, the vulnerability in his eyes matching her own. The man who could command empires was trembling in front of her, human and sincere. For a moment, the room felt suspended, the hum of fluorescent lights blending with the soft purring of Miss Marple on the windowsill. I need some space, Emma finally whispered, turning back to her papers. I have to think. Everything is moving too fast in your brother's actions. I feel like I'm losing control of my own story. Ethan nodded, though it hurt. Take all the space you need. No pressure. No expectations. I'll be here. The weeks stretched slowly. Ethan immersed himself in work, but each morning he checked his phone, hoping for a message from Emma. He knew the weight of scrutiny, the exhaustion it caused, but he also knew that their connection was worth fighting for. Then, unexpectedly, Marcus appeared at Emma's apartment with a bouquet of flowers. I owe you an apology, he said, sincerity in his tone. For the investigation, for assuming the worst. I was wrong. Emma accepted them cautiously, a small smile forming despite lingering wariness. Thank you. she said softly. But I hope this never happens again. It won't, Marcus assured her. I see now what Ethan sees, that you're genuine, that you care about him for who he is, not what he has. And that's rare, truly rare. Later, Madeline called Emma, inviting her to lunch. The conversation was formal at first, then gradually warmer as they shared experiences and laughed over small anecdotes. Two women, both protective of the same man, finding common ground over respect and understanding. By the end of the week, Emma felt a sense of cautious relief. She had faced the storm of scrutiny, the invasive investigation, and the misunderstandings without surrendering her independence. And Ethan had been there, not to overshadow her, but to support her, to show that partnership didn't mean control. That night, as she prepared dinner for herself, Miss Marple weaving through her ankles, Emma reflected on the week. The public eyes, the whispers, the pressure, it hadn't gone away. But she wasn't facing it alone. She had a partner who saw her, who understood her, and who refused to let the world dictate the terms of their love. Ethan's text came just as she set her plate down. Dinner smells amazing. Can't wait to see you tomorrow. No stress, just us. Emma smiled, a rare, unguarded smile. She typed back, see you tomorrow. And yes, just us. For the first time in weeks, she felt grounded. The chaos of wealth, family, and gossip hadn't erased her, hadn't diminished her. And she knew, with a quiet certainty, that together they could navigate anything the world threw at them. Because what mattered wasn't the scrutiny, the money, or the rumors. It was trust, respect, and the courage to face life together. And for Emma and Ethan, that was enough. Emma woke to the soft glow of morning sunlight filtering through her blinds. Miss Marple, her plump tabby, stretched and yawned, hopping onto the windowsill to bask in the warmth. For the first time in days, Emma felt a measure of calm. The storm of revelations, family tension, and invasive scrutiny had begun to settle. But she knew the world wouldn't stay quiet for long. Her phone buzzed on the nightstand. A text from Ethan. Coffee at the usual place? I'll bring breakfast. Emma smiled, quickly replying, see you in 30. By the time she arrived at the small corner cafe, Ethan was already there, leaning against the counter in his casual green Henley jeans. His gaze found hers, and a small, reassuring smile spread across his face. Good morning, he said, holding out a cup of steaming coffee. I got your favorite. No sugar, just the way you like it. Thanks, Emma replied, taking it carefully. The warmth of the cup seeped into her fingers, grounding her. I didn't expect you to make time this morning. I didn't expect to be thinking about you before my first meeting, Ethan said, voice low, almost embarrassed. But then I realized that mornings are better spent with you than spreadsheets and profit margins. Emma laughed softly, a sound she hadn't heard herself make in days. That's surprisingly sincere. He shrugged. I can be sincere sometimes. They found a corner booth, the one they'd claimed as theirs on previous visits. Conversation flowed easily at first, small talk about books, news, and the new students Emma had started teaching. Then, inevitably, the world intruded. I saw another article. Emma said, her tone careful, as if testing the waters. Some blog dug up my engagement announcement from 3 years ago. They're calling me a serial gold digger. Ethan's jaw tightened. He reached across the table, lightly brushing her hand. I saw it too. Don't let it touch you. You know the truth, Emma. That's what matters. Everyone else can speculate all they want. I know, she said, but the tension lingered. She took a sip of coffee, eyes fixed on the rich brown liquid. It's just everywhere I go, someone's watching, commenting, photographing. Yesterday at the grocery store, I noticed a camera lens following me for 3 blocks. Ethan's hand covered hers, firm and grounding. Then we deal with it together. I'm not asking you to navigate this alone. The attention, the assumptions, they don't define you. And they certainly don't define us. Her lips curved into a tentative smile. You make it sound easy. I'm not saying it's easy, he admitted. I'm saying it's worth it. You're worth it. And I want to be here while we figure it out. The bell above the cafe door jingled, and Emma's stomach tightened. A photographer had stepped inside, camera slung over his shoulder, scanning the room. Their eyes met hers briefly, and she felt that familiar spike of anxiety. Ethan's grip tightened around her hand. "Ignore him," he said quietly, almost a whisper. "He's not important. We are." Emma nodded, drawing strength from his presence. She realized, then, that her fear of judgment had always been about losing control of her story. Now, with Ethan beside her, she could face the world without surrendering herself. After breakfast, they decided to walk through the nearby park, letting the morning sun and crisp air clear their minds. The path was lined with golden leaves, crunching softly beneath their feet. Children played on swings, and Emma felt a pang of longing, imagining her own classroom filled with laughter and small triumphs. "Remember how I told you about my grandfather teaching me the importance of listening more than talking?" Ethan said, breaking the silence. "It's the same lesson I've been applying here. I've been listening, Emma. Listening to you, to your boundaries, to your fears. That's how I know that what we have, it's real." Emma looked at him, heart swelling. "You're not just saying that because of the chaos surrounding us." "No," he said firmly. "I mean it. I want to be with you, not the idea of you, not the image the world has created. You, Emma Hart, the woman who stands her ground, teaches her students with care, and fights for her independence, is exactly who I fell for." She felt a tear slip down her cheek, but it was mingled with relief and hope rather than sadness. "And you're okay with my life? My modest apartment, my secondhand clothes, the bills I've been clawing my way through?" "I'm more than okay," Ethan said. "I admire it. Your resilience, your determination, it's incredible. You've built a life on integrity and effort, and that's more impressive than any mansion or company. And I want to be part of that life, not to change it, but to share it." For the first time, Emma allowed herself to breathe fully, to believe that love didn't have to be complicated by money, social status, or gossip. She let herself enjoy the simple pleasure of walking beside someone who saw her, not just the world assumptions. Their peaceful moment was interrupted by a phone buzz. Ethan glanced at it and frowned. "A message from Marcus. Lunch tomorrow. We need to talk. It's important." Emma groaned softly. "Not Marcus again." Ethan chuckled. "He's trying, I think. Or at least, he's learning. We'll handle it together." The next day, the lunch was surprisingly civil. Marcus's initial coldness softened as he engaged Emma in conversation. Madeline joined as well, her warmth balancing Marcus's formality. They talked about school, community projects, and slowly, Emma saw a shift. Marcus admitted he had been too quick to judge, and Madeline acknowledged that she had underestimated Emma's strength and sincerity. By the end of lunch, Marcus shook Emma's hand firmly. "You've proven yourself, not just to me, but to Ethan. I see that now." Emma allowed herself a small smile, realizing that acceptance didn't have to come from immediate love or adoration. It could come from respect. Later, walking back to her apartment, Ethan slipped an arm around her shoulder. "See, the world isn't perfect, but we're handling it." Emma leaned into him, drawing comfort from his presence. "Yes, and we're doing it on our terms. No investigations, no assumptions. Just us." "That's right," he said, his voice quiet but steady. "We write our own story." And in that moment, Emma understood something essential. Love wasn't about erasing hardships or avoiding scrutiny. It was about partnership, trust, and resilience. With Ethan by her side, she could face the challenges ahead without losing herself. They reached her apartment, Miss Marple waiting patiently by the door. Emma paused, turning to Ethan. 6 months ago, I would have laughed if someone told me I'd be here, dating a man like you, handling public attention, still keeping my life intact." Ethan smiled, brushing a strand of hair from her face. "And yet, here we are. Not perfect, not easy, but real. That's what matters." Emma laughed softly, feeling the tension of the past weeks melt. "Real," she repeated. "I like the sound of that." "Good," Ethan said, leaning closer. "Because it's just the beginning." As they entered her apartment together, Emma realized that, for the first time in years, she felt a quiet certainty. The scrutiny, the gossip, the chaos, they could try, but they couldn't touch the foundation she and Ethan were building. Together, they were unshakable. The following week, Emma woke to the familiar chirping of birds outside her apartment window. Miss Marple stretched lazily across her keyboard, ignoring the grading papers that still awaited Emma's attention. For the first time in days, the weight of public scrutiny felt manageable. Her phone buzzed with a message from Ethan. "Dinner at my place tonight. Casual. Just us, and maybe a little wine. I want to see you smile without thinking about the outside world." Emma smiled, slipping into her favorite jeans and a soft sweater. She didn't feel the usual anxiety about making a first impression. This was their space, their world, and she intended to enjoy it. When she arrived, Ethan opened the door in a relaxed navy shirt, jeans slightly worn at the knees. "Emma," he said warmly, pulling her into a gentle hug. "You look perfect." "I'm casual tonight," she replied with a teasing grin. "No ratty sweatshirt, no pressure, just me." He chuckled. "That's exactly what I like." Inside, the apartment was cozy yet elegant. Books lined the walls, and small, personal touches, the photo of his grandfather's boat, a framed sketch of a lighthouse, gave the space character. It was a home that reflected him without overwhelming her. They cooked together, simple pasta and salad, and for a while the world outside faded. The headlines, the gossip blogs, the intrusive photographers, none of it mattered here. Conversation flowed easily, punctuated by laughter, playful teasing, and the occasional shared secret. After dinner, Ethan poured 2 glasses of wine, and they settled on the couch, Miss Marple curling up between them. Emma rested her head on Ethan's shoulder, savoring the quiet intimacy. "Do you ever wonder," she began, voice soft, "how different our lives are? Mine's so modest, yours everything." Ethan considered her words carefully. "All the time. But you know what I've realized? The difference doesn't matter when the connection is real. All this," he gestured around the apartment, "isn't why I care about you. It's you. Your values, your strength, your honesty. That's what drew me in." Emma let out a long breath, feeling a knot in her chest loosen. "And you're okay with me staying the way I am? Teaching, modest living, my little routines?" "I wouldn't have it any other way," he said, brushing her hair back from her face. I fell for Emma Hart, not her circumstances. Their moment of quiet was interrupted by a call from Marcus. Ethan glanced at the screen, hesitation in his eyes. "It's him. He wants to talk about the foundation you're helping oversee. He's trying to make amends, I think." Emma sighed. "Fine. I'll talk to him." The conversation with Marcus was surprisingly civil. He admitted that his initial interference had been misguided and praised Emma's resilience and integrity. "I was wrong about you," he said sincerely. "You've earned my respect." Ethan was right. Your intentions are genuine. Emma nodded, relief washing over her. "Thank you. That means a lot." Even Patricia, initially wary, reached out directly afterward. She invited Emma for tea, a quiet meeting of 2 women who cared deeply for the same man. The afternoon was filled with laughter, shared stories, and moments of mutual understanding. By the time Emma left, she felt lighter, less encumbered by the invisible weight of judgment and expectation. Back at Ethan's apartment, the evening had shifted into a gentle rhythm of quiet companionship. They sat together on the couch, reviewing a small stack of books Ethan had picked up at a used bookstore that morning. Mystery novels, maritime histories, and even a few vintage postcards filled the table. "You really listened," Emma said, holding up a dog-eared copy of The Silent Witness. "You remember my favorite authors." "I pay attention," he said, a small grin tugging at his lips. "It's part of knowing you." Emma's chest swelled with warmth. She had spent so many years guarding herself, protecting her heart, that moments like this felt almost fragile in their perfection. But Ethan's presence was steady, unwavering. She realized that trust didn't mean the absence of risk. It meant choosing someone who made the risk worth taking. As the evening progressed, conversation drifted toward the future. "Do you ever think about what comes next?" Emma asked, her tone tentative. "All the time," Ethan admitted. "But I wanted to be on our terms. Not dictated by public opinion, not influenced by past mistakes. Just us building something together day by day." Emma nodded. "I like that. No rushing, no pressure. Just trust and partnership. That's exactly it, he said, leaning closer. Partnership. We support each other, challenge each other, and respect each other. Everything else is secondary. Her mind drifted briefly to the gossip articles, the photographers outside her apartment, the judgmental whispers. None of it seemed to matter anymore. The real world, the one that existed in Ethan's presence, was grounded, safe, and real. And if people don't like it, she asked quietly, they'll adjust, he said simply. Or they won't. That's their problem, not ours. Miss Marple purred, nudging against Emma's side, a small reminder of home, comfort, and routine. Emma realized that Ethan hadn't just entered her life. He had seamlessly become part of it, not replacing anything, but complementing it. As the night wore on, they settled into a comfortable silence, watching the city lights flicker below Ethan's apartment. Emma's hand found his, their fingers intertwining naturally. You know, she murmured, I never thought a man like you could want someone like me. Ethan turned, eyes soft and unwavering. And I never thought I'd meet someone who made me feel like I could be myself, without pretense. You've changed the way I see everything, Emma. You've shown me that love doesn't need to be complicated. It just needs to be real. Emma felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes, but they were tears of gratitude and joy rather than sorrow. Real, she echoed softly. Yes, he said, brushing a strand of hair from her face. Always real. In the weeks that followed, Emma and Ethan continued to navigate their world with newfound confidence. They faced gossip, public speculation, and family scrutiny with a united front. The occasional intrusion, the flash of a camera, the whisper of judgment, no longer rattled them. They had built a foundation grounded in respect, understanding, and shared values. Ethan introduced Emma to more of his family on his terms, ensuring that each interaction was measured and considerate. Emma remained true to herself, teaching her students, maintaining her modest apartment, and preserving the life she had built independently. And slowly, those around them began to see what Ethan had always known. Emma's authenticity and integrity were unshakable. By the end of the chapter, Emma sat at her desk, surrounded by colorful construction paper and the chaos of an after-school project. Ethan was curled up beside her, reading a history book, Miss Marple napping on his lap. The world outside their apartment still buzzed with noise and opinion, but inside, they had carved out a space of peace, love, and mutual understanding. Emma realized that the real challenge wasn't wealth, status, or public scrutiny. It was holding on to oneself while building a life with someone else. And with Ethan, she felt confident that they could do it together. For the first time in years, Emma wasn't just surviving. She was thriving, protected by love, strengthened by trust, and ready for whatever came next. The morning sun streamed through Emma's apartment window, catching the dust motes in golden shafts of light. Miss Marple stretched luxuriously across the couch, yawning as Emma sipped her coffee, feeling the calm after weeks of emotional turbulence. Her phone buzzed. A message from Ethan. Meet me at the school after classes. I have something for you. Casual, bring coffee. No paparazzi, no pressure. Emma smiled, her heart fluttering. After everything, the gossip, the intrusive headlines, the constant scrutiny, this felt like a safe moment, a simple promise between them. She finished her grading, packed her bag, and left with Miss Marple perched in her shoulder carrier like a tiny, judgmental co-pilot. Outside the school, Ethan was waiting by the playground. Jeans, a soft gray sweater, casual hair, and that easy smile that made her heart leap. He held a small cardboard box, and the way he looked at her made her forget every worry, every article, every intrusive thought that had plagued the past months. You came, he said warmly. Coffee. I wouldn't miss this, Emma replied, sliding her hand into his. They sat on a bench, the late morning sun casting gentle shadows across the playground. Children's laughter echoed from a nearby class, and Emma felt grounded, part of a world that was real, tangible, and steady. So, Ethan began opening the small box. I wanted to do this somewhere meaningful. Inside the box was a delicate ring, simple but elegant. It was nothing ostentatious, yet it felt personal, thoughtful, as though every curve and facet reflected him. Emma blinked, caught off guard. Is this what I think it is? Ethan's smile widened, a mixture of nervousness and hope. I want to ask you to marry me. Here, in a place that's yours, where your world and my world meet. Not a gala, not a public announcement. Just us. Her heart raced. She felt the weight of the past months, the hurdles, the fear, and yet also the undeniable certainty that Ethan was someone she could trust, someone who saw her. This is perfect, she whispered, tears prickling. Yes, I'll marry you. He slipped the ring on her finger, and she marveled at how natural it felt, like it had always belonged there. They leaned into each other, a kiss that was soft, grounding, and full of the promise of shared futures. Miss Marple meowed indignantly from her carrier, as if protesting the display of human affection. Emma laughed, scratching behind the cat's ears. She's going to be part of this too, Ethan. Agatha Christie comes with me. I wouldn't have it any other way, he said, smiling as he kissed her temple. The next few weeks passed in a whirlwind of quiet preparation. Emma continued teaching, maintaining the modest life she loved, while Ethan supported her without interfering. They met with Patricia for tea, shared meals with Marcus, and slowly navigated the delicate balance of family acceptance. Marcus, surprisingly, softened more than anyone expected. He even offered advice about dealing with public perception. You've earned your place, Emma, he admitted. I misjudged you, and I'm glad Ethan has someone like you. Patricia's warmth followed soon after. She invited Emma to accompany her to charity events, not to impress, but to include her in family life. Emma discovered that Ethan's family, like any other, had their quirks and challenges, but with openness and authenticity, bridges could be built. On a crisp Saturday afternoon, Ethan led Emma back to the same coffee shop where they had first met. It had been months, yet the scent of cinnamon and espresso still carried a comforting familiarity. Feels like a lifetime ago, Ethan said softly, watching her eyes scan the familiar corner booth. Emma nodded, smiling. I never thought a blind date could lead here. To this. To us. Ethan chuckled. Neither did I, but here we are. He took her hand, fingers interlacing. I want to keep building this life with you, Emma. Every little moment, every challenge, every quiet Friday night with pizza and murder mystery podcasts. Her laughter was soft, filled with contentment. Deal. But I insist on picking the pizza toppings. They sat together, sipping coffee, recounting small memories from the past months. The library, the diner, the family dinner that had tested every nerve. Each memory was a thread in the tapestry they were weaving together. As the months rolled on, engagement preparations were simple and intentional. Emma insisted on a small ceremony, inviting her students to decorate the hall with handmade flowers and artwork. Ethan supported every decision, never pushing, never imposing. The wedding day was bright, clear, and filled with warmth. Children's laughter mingled with the soft rustle of dresses and the faint scent of fresh flowers. Miss Marple, perched in her decorated carrier, watched with disdainful approval. Ethan stood at the front, dressed in a simple but elegant suit, eyes scanning the crowd until they settled on Emma. Her hair was softly curled, her dress modest yet graceful, and her eyes reflected joy, love, and confidence. You're here, he whispered, taking her hands in his. I am, she replied, heart racing. And I'm not going anywhere. The ceremony was brief, but meaningful. Vows were exchanged, focusing on respect, partnership, and shared dreams rather than grandeur or wealth. They promised to honor each other's independence, to listen, to support, and to face challenges together. As the officiant pronounced them married, Emma felt a sense of completeness she hadn't experienced in years. This wasn't a fairy tale built on fortune. It was built on understanding, trust, and authenticity. Family mingled, laughed, and, most importantly, accepted her as one of their own. Marcus gave a speech acknowledging his misjudgment, Patricia shed tears of joy, and Tracy, naturally, insisted on taking credit for the entire match. Even the photographers who tried to sneak pictures were politely shown the door. Emma and Ethan had learned the value of boundaries, and now they exercised them fully. Their happiness wasn't for public consumption, it was for them. Later, as evening settled, they returned to Ethan's apartment, quiet and intimate. Miss Marple leapt onto the couch, curling up between them. "I can't believe this is real," Emma murmured, resting her head against Ethan's shoulder. "It is," he replied, kissing her hair. "Real, messy, complicated, and perfect in its own way. And it's ours." Emma smiled, thinking about the years of struggle, the careful boundaries she had built, the heartbreak she had endured, and the courage it had taken to trust again. She realized that love wasn't about perfection or wealth. It was about connection, respect, and being seen. "I love our life," she said quietly. "I do too," Ethan replied. "And I promise, no matter what comes next, we'll face it together. Every challenge, every joy. You and me. Team Heartwarming." Emma laughed, leaning into him. "Team Heartwarming. I like the sound of that." That night, they ordered pizza, curling up on the couch, listening to murder mystery podcasts, and sharing quiet conversation. Wealth didn't define them. Public opinion didn't define them. Their love, steadfast, respectful, and genuine, was the only measure that mattered. And as the city lights flickered below Ethan's apartment, Emma felt a deep, unshakable sense of belonging. Not because of luxury, not because of status, but because she had found someone who saw her, loved her, and built a life with her, piece by piece, on equal footing. Miss Marple purred, winding herself around their legs. Emma and Ethan laughed softly, realizing that happiness was simple, messy, and beautiful. They had built a partnership that neither wealth nor circumstance could undermine. For Emma and Ethan, life wasn't a fairy tale bought or orchestrated. It was a life earned, lived authentically, and cherished fully. And on quiet Friday nights, with pizza and podcasts, they were exactly where they belonged.